Okay, it looks like some people are still filtering in, but we're going to get started here as it is the top of the hour. Hello, and thank you for joining our discussion today on harnessing CRM and core integration. This is a topic that we've seen come up with our bank and credit union customers quite often, and it's something that we've been wanting to cover for a while. So we're very excited to be talking to you about it today. Start off with some quick introductions. My name is Deneen Madura. I am the marketing director here at Technology Advisors, and my co-host today is Megan Sheehan, our chief operating officer. So some of you on this call might know us, some of you might not. So I'm going to do a quick intro of who we are. We are a Chicago-based CRM and digital transformation consultancy. We've been doing this for over 3 decades. We are experts in data integration and migration, which I'll speak to in a moment. But basically what we do is we help our clients strategically plan their software investments. And that is CRM, but also the digital transformation strategies and complementary software related to that. We help them with finding the right software for their needs, managing their project, training their teams on the CRM and getting their teams to adopt the CRM customization, and then that data migration and integration piece. So before we continue, I just want to do a quick poll, and I would like to take a moment to understand where everyone is with their CRM journey. Do you currently have a CRM? Are you thinking about getting a CRM? Or maybe CRM is just not really as much of a priority right now, but you wanted to kind of explore this topic a little more. So I'll give you a couple seconds to answer that. Okay, it looks like most of you have a CRM and you're happy with it. So that's great. That's a great start. On the right-hand side here, these are a couple of our bank and credit union customers, one of which we'll dive into a little bit more later. So on the integration migration side, our sister company is Starfish ETL. Starfish ETL is an iPaaS, and that just means integration platform as a service. So it lives in the cloud. And as an iPaaS, it's highly dynamic. So it can do not only data integration and data migration, but you can use Starfish ETL to help with data archiving, data governance needs, prep for data lakes and warehouses. There's more than 400 connections that are available through Starfish, again, lending to that ability to be dynamic. You can go ahead and look us up on G2. You can also look up Technology Advisors on G2, actually. But Starfish, based on user ratings, does very well. Users are very satisfied with the implementation, with the ability to use it, with the user adoption, and the results that they're getting from their projects. So you can go and read some of their comments on the platform. With Starfish or with any integration project, you're able to do the project yourself or get full service support. Full service support would be, Technology Advisors is going to handle the whole project for you. We're going to manage the integration for you. We're going to set everything up and do all the technical work if you don't have a technical resource to do that. Or you could DIY. You have someone in-house, you have an IT person designated. We could do some mentoring with that person and teach them how to use a Starfish platform to get you the results that you're looking for. It does not matter if you're in the cloud, if you're on premises, or if all your systems are hybrid of those two options. Starfish ETL will be able to bridge the data between them and do that in a secure way. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? Well, of course, we want to start with what are the use cases for this? Why are banks and credit unions even doing CRM core integration in the first place? What are the best practices for preparing for this? What do you need to be thinking about? What needs to happen with your data? How do you need to bring your team together to figure out the desired goals? What questions you need to be asking of your team to get the desired outcome from this project. And then we're going to show you a demo of what it might look like to have that integrated data in a CRM. We're going to be showing you that in Creatio CRM. What would it look like for that profile enrichment and alerts? So first of all, what are the use cases for this? And before I even get into that, I've got one more poll I want to ask. Who here has already embarked on integrating CRM and Core? Where are you in that process? Are you just getting started? Are you thinking about it, but maybe it's a little more down the road? Is it really not top of mind right now, but you're just kind of on a information gathering quest at the moment? So I'll give you a minute or two to answer that. Okay, it looks like it's about a 50-50 split. Some of you are just in the early stages of this. Some of you are looking at potentially integrating CRM with a core about 6 months down the road. So you're in the right place. So what are the use cases for this? Why are banks and credit unions even bothering to do this? First of all, there's a need for a 360 customer review, and that is the overall benefit and usability of the CRM and core integration, right? Just having all that information accessible from one view and being able to better serve your members and your customers. Seamless account management. Instead of having teams jumping through different systems, trying to piece together all this information about customers or members, they're able to manage the account in one location, automate a lot of the processes and tasks related to that account management, and just have this really efficient process. Targeted cross-sell. So with the CRM core integration, you can see in one spot all the products and services that a client is already using. And then if you want, not everybody likes to do this, but you can also add AI-driven product recommendations. Some people like the AI-driven product recommendation idea. Some people are a little more weary, but that is an option when you are integrating CRM and core together, is to kind of streamline that upsell cross-sell process by using intelligent data to inform your team on what to do next. Real-time data for customer service and support, that is a must in order to successfully support your members and customers. Analytics. One of the great things about CRM is its ability to really visualize that data for you on a dashboard and make it really easy to understand where your accounts are at, where your customers might have needs that aren't being currently fulfilled. And so that will also improve your operational efficiency. And then automating workflows. And not only is automating those workflows going to reduce errors, but it's also going to free up your team from having to do these redundant, mundane tasks on the day-to-day that they don't really need to be spending their time on. Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to send an email to my coworker, I just talked to this person and they need to know this information, you automate that whole process, and it's just one less thing on their plate that they have to worry about doing, and one less thing that can slip through the cracks. So I wanted to hit you with some stats as well on CRM core integration. Salesforce found that financial institutions using integrated CRM solutions have a 45% increase in customer retention rates. Gartner also found that banks with integrated CRMs have a 20 to 25% reduction in their process cycle times. And that is because of those automated workflows and because of that consolidated customer information being accessible from one location. McKinsey report highlighted that banks with effective CRM integration see a 10 to 15% increase in their cross-sell upsell apps, and that leads them to higher revenue growth. And then you have PwC research They found that integrating CRM and Core better equipped teams to manage risk and compliance, and that led to a 25% reduction in those compliance costs. So we want to talk about a real world use case for CRM and CRM Core integration. Our customer Consumers Credit Union recently finished up a project with us and was gracious enough to let us tell their story. So Consumers Credit Union didn't initially have a CRM, and this was causing numerous issues. It was causing frustration with the staff, first of all, because they were having to jump between all these systems to learn basic member details. But they were also having these disparate applications for their case and lead management where, they were basically using these systems not in the way that they were meant to be used, trying to use them as case and lead management systems, just because that was what they had. And so they were trying to make it work. Understandably, customers were also frustrated with the experience, the member experience. NPS scores and surveys were telling Consumers Credit Union something was wrong and they needed to make some changes. They had very high call wait times and they had inconsistent follow-up for their members. So a member might reach out and say, hey, I need something, I'm having an issue. And then a week later, they still haven't heard back and they reached back out and said, hey, you guys never followed up with me. And you really couldn't blame Consumers team for that because they didn't have an effective way to do that follow-up. They didn't have a consistent process. They were also using their core banking solution as their CRM. And a CRM as a customer relationship management solution is built for managing those member relations, right? The core banking solution, as wonderful and as powerful as it is not built for that. And so trying to hobnob that together was really making work more difficult than it needed to be for everybody. So what did Consumer Credit Union do about this? First of all, they adopted CRM in the first place, and they went with a no-code CRM called Creatio. What that did was it immediately helped them build a 360 member view so they could see all the information about a member when they called. Also, they went with no code specifically. And the reason that they did that was for a couple of reasons. But first of all, because with no code, their teams were able to start using it faster. And because it was no code, teams could adapt their processes instead of the other way around. And what I mean by that is this QR code here is actually going to take you to the full recording of our interview with them. But essentially what they said was, look, a lot of these other systems that we were looking at were good CRMs. There was nothing wrong with them. But the problem we were seeing was that if we had chosen one of those, CCU would have lost a little bit of what made them CCU because we would have had to alter the way we do business to match the CRM. Whereas with Creatio, the no-code solution that they chose, they were able to easily adapt Creatio to their processes and their business goals. And that was a deciding factor for them. So as I said, that QR code's for the full recording. Check it out and let us know what you think. So the other solution obviously was integrating their new CRM with their core. What did that do? First of all, they're able to solve member problems faster now. These member issues are no longer falling through the cracks. Their data is trackable, it's reportable. So if a department is struggling, if a member is having a recurring issue, they're able to easily see that and take actions to fix the situation. Now, instead of having to jump around between systems, they've reduced the number of systems that they need in order to resolve different types of problems. Their teams can go right into the CRM and say, hey, everything's located in one spot. this member's calling in, I have a complete view of their history with us, their cases, their accounts, and any flags, all of that is right there for them so that when the member calls, they can address their needs more efficiently. So I'm going to pass the floor over to Megan to talk to us about what is necessary for preparing CRM and core integration.
Thanks, Deneen. So I'm going to be talking about 5 different areas that you should be thinking about as you're preparing for your CRM core integration project. I'm going to start with a quick overview of each of the 5 areas, and then we'll dive deeper into each one of them. The first one is defining your integration architecture. So this is where you're going to think about what sort of integration approach you're using, batch versus real-time, one-way versus two-way, and we'll dive deeper into what those mean and what the benefits of each are. Your integration project might offer a good opportunity to think about data cleansing and standardization. So we'll talk a little bit about that. As part of your integration planning, you are definitely going to need to map the data between your CRM and core banking system fields. You're also going to need to do some planning around how you're going to develop and test your integration, as well as how you're going to train your users on the capabilities that you're providing to them through the integration. So thinking a little bit more about integration architecture, I think it's always really important to start with the goals in mind. So before you do any other planning, you should be asking, what are the business goals that are going to be supported by this integration? That's going to help you then answer what data is needed to support those goals. And this is a good conversation as well to start having a good time to start having the conversation about minimal viable product. So minimal viable product means what's the smallest amount of development I can provide that gives value to my users without taking months and months and months to build. So maybe there's 100 things that they're asking me for, but I only give them 25 or 30 of those things in phase 1 because that's enough to provide some real value to start making some good progress towards those goals without having to take quite so long to build. And so that's going to help you get something out to your teams faster. But again, you want your goals to drive that conversation. The minimal viable product has to help meet those goals. And that's going to help you prioritize what to do first. Once you've had that conversation around what your goals are and what data you need, you could also look at where that data is stored and start to understand and dig into how it can be accessed. And that's going to potentially be a big driver in the decision that you make on your integration approach. So there are 2 main ways you can approach your integration, batch or real-time, and we'll talk a little bit more about each of those. So a batch integration, as the name implies, is taking a group of data and pushing that batch of data from one system to another. Typically, this is done periodically on some sort of schedule. That could be nightly, it could be hourly, it could be every 5 minutes. And you're often doing something like find everything that's changed in that time frame and push all of those updates to your other application. So frequently, this is core to CRM. Find everything that's changed in my core in the last 5 minutes, push all of those changes to my CRM. Or find everything that changed in my core today, push all of those changes to my CRM overnight. One really important need with this approach is a way to identify which data it is that has changed. If you're trying to process all of your data every period, that's going to probably drag down the efficiency. And it's going to make it harder to do a more frequent push. You might be able to do that in a nightly push. You're not going to be able to do that in an every 5 minutes push. So the capabilities of your core there might, again, help drive the decisions that you need to make. Batch integration is pretty good at managing large volumes of data. We know lots of things probably change every day within your bank for all of your customers. Lots of transactions might occur, balances change, and a batch integration can typically capture all of those changes and push them over in an efficient time frame. Batch integration is also really good in support of reporting. So this is a good background process where it's running behind the scenes on an automated, cadence, and gathering, again, all of those data points that have changed and making sure those changes are pushed over so your reports are accurate in your CRM. Real-time integration, as the name implies, means that we're capturing or identifying and moving those changes in real time. Now, there's actually two different variations here. One is a real-time push, where when data is changed in one system, say your core, you immediately push that updated data to another system. So that's immediately available there. It's similar to batch in that it's triggered by the change, but it's in real time versus on a schedule. Or, and this is probably the one approach we see used more often, when a record is accessed, say in your CRM, you can query your core and display relevant data from your core that's up to the moment in accuracy. The first option here, the push, can sometimes be a little bit dependent on volume and how quickly and accurately the CRM system in this case can receive all of those updates from core. And vice versa, the real-time pull, depending on the performance of your core APIs, can also sometimes be a little bit problematic from a performance perspective. But a real-time integration is really great for time-sensitive data. When I need to know somebody's balance, I need to know their balance now, not their balance 10 minutes ago, and certainly not their balance yesterday, because it's probably changed since then. Because both of these options have pretty significant benefits as well as downsides, it's becoming more common for us to see customers combining both of them together to really have the best of both worlds. In this case, you're probably using the batch sync to do something like a nightly push of all updated data and a real-time pull of that time-sensitive data when a contact or account record is pulled up in the CRM system. So that's going to give you the benefits of both options, making your data available for reporting in an efficient way, but also giving your users up to the moment data where it matters that the data be that accurate down to the moment. But obviously the downside here is you're doing potentially twice as much work to build your integration. And you would also need to have the structure in place to support both options on your core, which is not always the case. The other main integration architecture question that you're going to have to decide is, are you doing a one-way sync, typically from your core to your CRM? Or are you doing a two-way sync where at least some changes can be made in the CRM and pushed back to the core? A couple of the questions that you'll want to think about if you are considering a two-way sync. First of all, is there a clear system of record that owns that data? Oftentimes, for most of our data points, the core might be that clear system of record. And therefore, you're going to want to make sure that you're thinking about that logic as you decide your rules for how that integration is going to work. And another really important question to be thinking about is, how complex are your permission sets? A lot of cores let you get really into the specifics as far as who can do what, who can change a phone number, who can change an address, who can do this type of transaction or that type of change. If you're going to start to allow some of those changes to happen in the CRM, you're going to need to align the permissions so that the CRM has the same permissions that the core does, and that's not always simple to do. So that's something else you're going to want to factor into your decision there. This is also a common point where iteration can be really important. A lot of times we see the MVP, minimal viable product, might be a one-way sync with the plan and development to follow to move it into a two-way sync over time. Moving past the integration architecture, Again, another topic that you're going to want to give some thought to is, do you want to do any data cleansing and standardization before or as part of your integration project? This is generally not a must-have or a requirement for an integration project, but an integration project provides a good opportunity to take that step back, do that data audit, and see where you might have chances to make some improvements. Things like removing duplicates, standardizing data formatting. So are you using abbreviations or full state names? Are you formatting phone numbers in a specific way? Things like that. And this is also a good time to define data standards so that you can ensure that data is being input consistently and therefore that it will flow properly between your core and your CRM without having any problems with data validation rules. Something else you're going to have to think about, especially if you're in the situation where you already have your CRM up and running and there's data in there, and your core obviously already has data in there, how are you going to match up the data between those two different systems to ensure that you can sync that data together to make customer profile and not end up with duplicate contacts? So you're going to want to think about what unique data points exist in both systems, a social security number or a customer number or member number, something like that, that you can use to link those data points together. Along the same lines, this becomes even more important if you start to think about other integrations outside of core and CRM. Maybe you're going to also integrate your LOS system or your other origination systems or your online banking system or a survey tool. In each of those additional integration points, you're going to have to reconsider this question. And again, think about how to merge all of those things together into a single customer 360 view, as opposed to having those pieces kind of stored separately on duplicate contacts. So that's a really key point to be thinking about as you roll out additional integration. In order to integrate two systems, you're certainly going to have to define where the data is coming from and where it's going to go. And we call this data mapping. So looking at each of the data points you want to include in your integration and understanding where that's at in your core and where you want that data to live in your CRM. Understanding your data structure becomes really important here. So if you don't already have someone involved in your project who understands the data structure on both sides, you're going to want to bring those resources in. And I find that it typically works well to start at a high level, thinking about what tables are going to align first, and then working towards a detailed field by field level mapping. This is the address field in my core. This is the address field in my CRM. This is the phone number field in my core. This is my phone number field in my CRM, and so on down the list. As you're doing that, this is also a good time to be thinking about filtering logic. Do you want all of the data that's in your core, in terms of, say, all of your customers, to push over to your CRM? Or are there certain types of customers or certain types of accounts you don't want? Maybe there's, I don't know, like wealth management services or something that are in your core but managed by an outside team or something like that, and you don't want those included in the sync. Or maybe you have accounts that were closed 20 years ago, customers that haven't been active for 20 years, and you maybe want to exclude those. This is where you're going to want to make those decisions. This is also a good time to be thinking about expected data volume if you haven't already, and that might help drive some of those filtering decisions as well. And then finally, you want to do some thinking and planning around what sort of data translations or transformations might be needed. Again, especially if, excuse me, if you already have data in your CRM and your core, that data is not always going to align 100%. Things like segments, categories, even like the names of branches or something like that, departments, might have been set up slightly differently between the two systems. And so you're going to need to first identify that, and second, make a plan for how to match those values up and align that data. You're also going to want to do some early planning around development and testing plans on a couple of key points. First of all, you want to think about resourcing. Who should be involved in designing your integration and answering these types of questions? Who's going to build your integration? I'm actually listed here, but who's going to test your integration? And what software and hardware resources do you need? Do you need an integration platform tool like Starfish in order to help support your integration design and build out? Do you need a sandbox site from your CRM or your core to use for testing? Do you need a VPN connection or some other secure tunnel between your core and your CRM? It's really good to have thought those things through before you start so that you don't get stuck halfway through. It's also really important before you get to the phase of testing that you've created a well-defined test data set and you're not just kind of throwing something together at the last minute for testing. A well-defined test data set is going to ensure that you're able to thoroughly test your integration in a really good way. You want your test data set to be representative of your data as a whole, but you also want your test data set to include, excuse me, to include any of the edge cases that you know you have in your data. For example, if you acquired another bank or credit union and you know that the customer data for that group of customers looks different, you want to make sure you're including some of those in your test data set. That way, you're making sure that those edge cases are all tested and not going to result in data validation errors. And so you want to find those in testing and not once your integration is live. You do also just want to generally make a plan for error handling. There are going to be exceptions that you didn't think about. How do you want those exceptions to be handled by the integration? Do you want to do alerts? Do you want to retry them with different logic? Nothing works 100% of the time, as much as we all wish it did. And so even if it's, 99.99%, you need to make a plan for that 0.01% of the time that things don't work right. This might be things like one of the systems is down periodically, or data validation rules, permission differences. Again, you want to make sure you've thought about what you want to have happen in those scenarios so that you can make sure you build the integration in a way to support that. You also want to make sure that you're planning for this change for your users. You're obviously going to want to train your users on the integration. And a few of the key points that they're going to need to know about. First of all, what data is or is not included in the integration. They need to know what to expect, what data they can expect to see and which data not so much. They need to understand the frequency of that data refresh, especially if you're doing something like a nightly batch data. It's really important to know which data is a day old and which data might actually be updated in real time if you're doing that combination. That's going to drive decisions about how they want to use that data. And finally, especially if you're doing a two-way integration, they're going to need to know where they can input what data. What can they do in the CRM? What do they have to do in the core? And also, it's really important, of course, to gather user feedback and iterate over time. Again, that ties back to the idea of the minimal viable product, getting something valuable into their hands as fast as possible, and then adding more functions and features over time based on feedback. So in conclusion, a few of the must-ask questions that you should be aligning on with your team before you start on an integration project. What business goals will be supported by building this integration, of course. Specifically, what data is needed in support of those goals, but you can start designing the right architecture. What options are available to us as far as the integration architecture? And of those options, which one best aligns to our goals? How are we going to test the integration and train our users? And what is our minimal viable product? Again, going back to that concept of getting something out there as fast as we can, providing value to our users, and helping them increase their efficiencies and all those other wonderful use cases that Deneen shared before. So with that, I'm going to do a quick demo of what this might look like inside your CRM. I'm going to be using Creatio in my demonstration here. So Creatio, if you're not familiar with it, is a CRM product that is consistently well recognized by analysts like Gartner and Forrester. They do provide a CRM platform and a no-code automation platform with sales, marketing, and service all in a single unified platform. So my demonstration site here today is the very humbly named and entirely fictional Bank of Megan. And I'm starting off here on the homepage because, as we've talked about, one of the ways you might want to use the data that you are integrating from your core is to do some reporting and analytics inside your CRM. And especially to tie those data points in with other data points that maybe only live in your CRM. So this is just a couple of examples of some of the reports you might want to include. And many of these might be data points that come from my core, things like, which types of financial products or services have people added this month? How many people have signed up for online banking? Or how do things break down by branch or by team or department? So I can evaluate the effectiveness of different groups within my organization and see who might need more resources or more help. One of the things I think is really powerful about this is the ability to merge together those data points between CRM and core. So for example, the cases and leads data might live only in Creatio in my CRM, but I can put that together with the data from the core into a single dashboard or even in a single process where that data interacts with each other. And I've got an example of that open here. This is a background process automation. And what this is doing is whenever a new account is created, which I should probably label here, it's looking for any active leads for that customer for that type of product and automatically closing them. So we know that Megan is considering adding a checking account. We have a lead for that. We're following up with her about adding a checking account. She opens a checking account. Great. We know that happened. Let's close the loop on that, automatically close out that lead as a success, credit anyone who might receive credit for a referral or anything like that there, all without requiring any human intervention and allowing that to happen seamlessly and automatically. And that's just one really simple example of how you can tie those different types of activities together between your core and your CRM. Obviously, another really popular use case is for Customer 360. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a customer profile here. I could do that a few different ways. I could search by a name or a phone number or an account number, or I can use the consultation panel here, where again, I can search in different ways. I'm going to go ahead and just open up one that I had already saved open here and pull up Madison's profile. Now, Creatio is a no-code application. And what that means primarily, at least in this context, is that there is a really powerful no-code page designer tool where you can drag and drop and move things around on the page and add different charts and metrics and really change the mechanics of how the data is displayed on the page. So this is one example of what this page could look like, but it's really up to you and your team to decide what are the data points you want to highlight and how do you want to organize and display that data. So you can see some of this data is probably coming from my core, things like my customer ID and my social security number. And I can summarize key highlights from that data. So I can see that Madison here has 3 open accounts, 4 lifetime accounts, but I can see some of the details of those accounts down here. I can scroll over to see additional information about them, or I can click on any of these links to get more information. And that data could be data that was loaded in through a batch integration. So it's just here, it's static. It could also be data where I'm doing a real-time API call, especially something like a balance. If I'm going to show that in my CRM, I probably want that to be more accurate than last night. And so that's a really popular place for us to see real-time API calls. Flags or warnings is another really popular place for us to see real-time API calls. If there's been some sort of a fraud or other issue with Madison's accounts, I want to know that right away, and I want to know that up to the moment in time. Some of the other data might not be as time sensitive. It might not change as much. Things like what product Madison opened first, or her preferred language, or things like that. You know, those don't change frequently. They probably don't need to be real time unless I'm doing a full real time integration. I'm going to click through a couple of these other tabs and again, just show you some other ways you might use this data. So under the engagement tab, I have just a few examples of ways that we might track different products and services that our customers are using. So are they using online banking, bill pay, direct deposit, or again, these are just examples, any other products or services that we want to track. These can be really good for segmenting my data, knowing that Madison doesn't use online bill pay. Maybe I want to put her into a campaign to try to get her to sign up for that, to tell her about all the benefits that online bill pay provides. And those can also be used to tie product recommendations. This is something Deneen mentioned, can be AI driven. So being able to say that these are some great products or services that Madison might need to sign or might want to sign up for next. And that can be driven based off of, you know, what products and services she's currently using and other characteristics of her profile. And again, a lot of what we've talked about today doesn't necessarily apply only to core integration. So you might also be integrating other things like your LOS or other origination systems, and being able to see things like loan statuses, what loans are in process, et cetera. So any of that data that you're pulling in from your core is going to be available to see inside of your CRM and display in different ways, whether that's in, you know, highlighting key numbers, showing even charts about how things have changed over time. And again, this is a good way to think about what data changes frequently, what needs to be done in real time, and what maybe does not. So I think that's the end of my demo. I'm going to go ahead and turn things back over to Deneen to wrap up and answer any questions that you've asked.
Thank you so much, Megan. All right, I want to tie this all together by explaining how we can help in this process. So Megan had mentioned a lot of really important things that you need to be thinking about and discussing with your team internally. But some of that can get overwhelming. It can be confusing, you know, trying to decide, well, do we need batch or do we need real time? Do we need both types? Do we need, you know, what's our minimum viable product? Which data do we need passing through? That's where we can really help you with the integration strategy. We can come in and we can talk to your team, understand what your goals are, and help you map all that out in a structured way so that you can get to that minimal viable product. You can understand what that is in the first place, and then get to the minimal viable product as quickly as possible. So we can really guide that process with best practices. As part of that, and again, what Megan was talking about, data cleaning, we can help you with that, helping you recognize, well, is this data important? Should this data be archived? Does this data need to be cleaned up? and getting all of your information ready for bridging these two systems together. Tying in with that, of course, data governance, which is key for both banks and credit unions. And then again, whether or not you choose to do full service or DIY integration, we can do some hand holding of a tech person on your internal side, or if you don't have the internal resources for that, we can manage the whole project for you and just keep you looped in and do our periodic meetings with you so you're aware of what's going on and you're still driving the process, but you don't have to worry about all the technical background. And then, of course, regardless of which of those approaches you do, it's supporting your integration. As Megan said, maybe you're rolling out your must-have features right now, and then later on you want to get to your nice-to-haves. So as that iterates and as you continue to evolve your integration, we're going to be with you, helping you every step of the way. So if you'd like to reach out to us, you can, of course, reach out directly to Megan or myself. Our information is here. Or you can reach out to our sales team at sales@techadv.com. What we'll do is set up an initial consultation meeting where we'll just start to get an idea of where your head's at. What are you thinking about? What questions do you have? How can we get a read on what you're trying to accomplish and offer some suggestions and advice for moving forward and being successful with your CRM core integration. So if there are no other questions, I think we'll wrap up. We're going to be recording this, of course, and we'll make sure that we get it to you early next week. Just want to thank everyone for their time. Thank Megan for her informative presentation. I hope this was really helpful for you, gave you some things to start mulling over, to start thinking about, and start discussing with your teams. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Or if something comes up later and you get an email next week and you want to chat, then just reply to that email and our team will receive that as well. All right, thank you so much. I hope everyone's having a great summer.